Hello, listeners. Hello, friends. Today I'm going to talk about conflict to suit their interest. When we are thinking about conflict, the first thoughts that comes to mind is causing harm to somebody, damaging, and often it brings caution to the mind to be that is dangerous and it can be disastrous, and it might hurt somebody. So these kind of things comes to the mind, and so we're going to discuss today that why didn't these thoughts occur in Jacob's mind. We're going to talk about the conflict that Jacob started with Esau, and Jacob's actions were to loot his brother Esau. And when we in the universities as students, when we are thinking about this kind of language, it's unthinkable to accept this notion um, that, like Jude says, that it was God who had done it. And we know God can't get involved in such low life acts. So we're going to open this discussion and talk about it. And we need to stop people like Jewish people and Israeli people who are whose acts are evil, and they um, honor their evil, and they then say, oh no, it's actually from God, and they are painting a different picture about God, and it's not just, it's not ethical. We need to stand up for God and say no, what's wrong is wrong. You can't rob or loot somebody, damage somebody. You can't deceive somebody and then say it is a righteous act. You cannot say that, because God Himself is righteous, and God is watching, and God must be hurting that such and such people who are behaving so horribly, and they are then putting the blame onto God, saying God made them do it, or God is God's blessing. We know God's blessings are somewhat different, and we'll talk about them in the discussion. Right, so you all probably heard the story of the twins, Jacob and Esau. They were two brothers. They were two brothers and two sons to Isaac and Rebekah. Rebekah was the mother, and Isaac was the father. Esau was the eldest, and Jacob was the other son. Right, so we're going to focus on Esau's loss of his birthright to Jacob, and the conflict that ensued between their descendant nations because of Jacob's deception of their aged and blind father, Isaac. And so he did it in order to receive Esau's birthright blessing from Isaac. He basically deceived his father, and his mother was in this game. And so we see how wrong morally, how wrong that is. We look up to our mothers, and we see the role of a mother is somewhat a genuine, a unique, a caring, a nurturing. But here it's a different type of mother, the mother Rebecca, um, mother of Jacob and Esau, and wife of Isaac. So it's devastating to see such personality. So anyway, the story goes that um, Esau was actually breadwinner. He worked hard. Esau went out to work hard, while um, Jacob sat at home doing nothing. And so Esau must have been he must have looked after his family. Literally, he was feeding them. In some Asian countries, or most of Asian countries, um, the the eldest son or the husband, the father, does this kind of job. But because Isaac was blind and old, um, he had um, he had we can see that Esau had taken his father's responsibility to take care of the family. So but we see how he was paid, how he was rewarded for his ethics, for his caring actions, for taking care of his family. So we see that Jacob must have hated his brother Esau because he wanted to steal his birthright and he planned to rob him. And in the book of um, the Bible, the and what Jewish people call Torah, the Tanakh, uh, it says there that uh, Jacob actually robbed uh, Esau, and in the Ten Commandments, it teaches um, people not to rob and not to kill and not to rob and not to rob. And so we see that Jacob planned to rob, and it was his mother who put him up to it. And so these people actually talk a lot about ethics of the father, and so ethics of the father, they really boast about it. But I don't know, we discuss in our universities, we don't know what they're boasting about. What exactly are they boasting about? And when we look at the story of Sarah and Hagar, how Sarah mistreated her slave servant and how badly he treated Sarah treated Hagar, and then her son Ishmael, and she didn't allow Ishmael to have any kind of respect or integrity or acknowledgement or honor. And she gave her son Isaac, and it's a theme that God gave that right. And these people should be hung seriously. The law of that land of that time was hanging. And when somebody had done something so wrong, right, they were hanged like Jesus. They hung Jesus. And so they actually, for telling lies and doing wrong, they used to hang people. And that's what Jacob's end should have been. But anyway, so let's continue with the story. Esau returned to his brother after his hard, working day. He was famished from the fields. He begged his twin brother to give him some red porridge. So he is a guy who has been working out all day. I just want to focus on let women think about it, and even men, husband, wife. You know that your husband is coming home after a hard day's work, and you know, um, and he asks you to provide a meal for him. Are you going to uh, do the kind of behaviors that Jacob did with his brother? I mean, for a meal, he just wanted to kill, to diminish the guy from the earth. And so, when we think in these terms, it is very unethical and very unlawful. So, anyway, the guy is famished from the field, which is Esau, And he comes home. He asks his twin brother, because Jacob is very, uh, relaxed at home, sitting at home, eating red porridge. And so anyway, he comes home and he's hungry. Jacob's not done anything all day. And so if he asked for a bowl of soup, he should have given it to him. And but instead, Esau finds himself not a meal but a deal. So we can see that Jacob is so ungrateful. And so Esau asks for a bowl of stew, and Jacob says, "No, I'm not going to give it to you. You need to exchange it with his with your birthright." I mean, at that time, Esau should have just smacked his face. Should have really done that, or his mother should have done it. But she was a bad mother anyway, so she didn't teach him any ethics or principles in life. And it's shameful that they bang on about it among themselves, and they teach each other, they teach their children that we want that kind of ethics of Jacob. So it's stealing actually, and the ethics of Rebecca, teaching the sons and the daughters to loot and rob other people and feel no compassion for other people. And if you see, they are pretty much hostile people. They're very hostile people. They're ugly people actually. Um, and it's very awkward when you're among them, because you don't know what they're keeping their eyes on. I mean, it's terrible to invite a man into your own house because that man is eyeing your wife. That's the type of people they are. They are not a principled people. So so anyway, where was we? So anyway, so Jacob had no discipline. It was the mother's duty to discipline the children. They were quite adult, actually. They should have known what they were saying and doing. Jacob should have known that, but obviously he wasn't disciplined and he wasn't taught principles or any kind of rule of respecting his brother, because he was his older brother. Um, so, so Esau had come home from hard day at work, working under the sun, and when he comes home, Jacob is hatching a plot, and his mother is with him in the in the in the game. So when we actually we our lecturers give us few minutes to think about it, we are actually thinking what a bastard Jacob is. What a bastard he is. And and that they are actually uh, handing down that kind of patriarch uh, uh, idea, a theme of life, a principle, which is not a principle. That kind of attitude about life and how to treat people, and it's a disgraceful. And I think they should be ashamed of themselves. They shouldn't be boasting about ethics of their fathers. They have no ethics. So it is actually quite daunting to think about what Rebecca was doing to her husband. She was playing tricks on her husband, and she didn't respect him, and it's quite demoralizing and quite discouraging for wives. So coming back to the birthright, is a position of both position of a position and an inheritance. Uh, by birthright, the firstborn son inherited the leadership of the family and the judicial authority of his father. And we see that Esau was doing that already. He was taking care of the father, he was taking care of the mother, and he was taking care of his young brother. But they plotted against him, which is the terrible thing about it. So Esau was being responsible, he was hardworking. On the other hand, Jacob was lazy, and he was lazing about at home, and he did not deserve the birthright that he had his eyes on. The birthright was actually Esau's. Esau was born first, it was God's choice, and he was trying to alter what God had done. And it is cheating, it is deception. And so, our homework at universities is to go home and ponder about these things. And they have stayed with me, and this is why I am discussing that. And so, I want to say that Jacob actually shows evil, and he didn't stop himself, he let the evil continue. And to this day, the evil is among Israelites. They have this false wealth uh, um, uh, behavior that they have. They are the favored people when they are actually disfavored by God. God cannot favor such people who put a who put a who black his honor by saying that their bad deeds they are putting on God and saying that's what God is saying. I mean, they are definitely blacklisted. And so we know that God is righteous, God is caring, and God is just, God is upright, God is virtuous, God has ethics, and he teaches us ethics. He's honest and he's decent. God is moral and God is honorable. And all of those, none of those acts, principles, we see the Israelites actually what they're talking about when they say blessings of Sarah, Rebecca, and Jacob. They pray for in their synagogues and in their homes that they have that blessing. It's not honorable, and so I don't think God is blessing them. That's why they're in so much trouble, and they will be in trouble because God is going to bring an end to their disgusting attitudes of the past. And so there is trouble for Israel. And I would say to the people that look after yourself, don't be involved with such people because they are not holy. They are crying out and telling other people we are not holy. We don't want anything to do with holiness. We are not holy. We are just we are very imperfect people. They are actually saying, and they have they say this because many people have pulled them up about it about the what Sarah did with Hagar and Rebecca and Jacob's act with Esau and so on and so forth. And there's many stories about it in the Tanakh. So anyway, to conclude, I want to say it was the deception on the part of Jacob and his mother. Rebekah counseled Jacob to pretend to be Esau in order to obtain the blessing of his brother, to gain Isaac's patriarchal blessing. And so Jacob dressed himself in Esau's best clothes and disguised himself by covering his arms in lambskin so that if his blind father touched him, he would think it was Jacob was Esau. I mean, Isaac was blind. I mean, how horrible is that? That Rebecca is dishonoring and cheating her own husband when he's blind. And Jacob, she's teaching Jacob to also Jacob is responsible because he's an adult and he's cheating his father. I mean, it's a disgraceful act. Jacob brought Isaac a dish of goat meat prepared by Rebekah to taste like a venison. Isaac then bestowed the blessing. So they deceived Isaac as well. It wasn't just Esau. So Esau must have been furious. He actually vowed to kill Jacob as soon as their father died. And I will conclude at universities that Esau's view is correct. And we know by God's nature is just and righteous, upright. And God, it was Esau who was the firstborn, and God would never take that, his birthright, away from him. That's all for today. Thanks, friends, for listening. Bye.